Good morning, Chairwoman Rivera and members of the Criminal Justice Committee. My name is Benny Boscio. I am the president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association. New York City correction officers are essential first responders who provide care, custody, and control of nearly 6,000 inmates in our custody. As you are well aware, the gross mismanagement and epic failures of the previous administration have created one of the worst crises our jails has ever faced. At the core of this crisis lies an epidemic of jail violence fueled by the previous administration's failure to restore safety and security in our jails. If there are any meaningful lessons learned from the failures of the past, it's that prioritizing a political ideology over safety and security and governing by activism instead of pragmatism has failed everyone in our jails. And yet here we are before you today as this council, led by 36 of its members, are pushing forward with a piece of legislation that is driven solely by a political ideology rather than by data and hard facts. I am here today to talk about the hard facts that this committee, the Council Speaker Adrian Adams, and the Public Advocate Jumaane Williams simply choose to ignore. A report issued by the City Comptroller last year analyzed jail violence indicators going back to 2011. The report provides a glimpse into the steady rise in violence every year. The rate of inmate fights nearly quadrupled since 2011, with an 18% increase in fiscal year 21. Assaults on staff more than quintupled since 2011, with an increase of 24% last year. In addition, there were 247 stabbings and slashings in fiscal year 21, up from 123 the previous year. And only until recently has the Department of Corrections started tracking sexual assaults on correction officers, approximately 35 of which occurred since January of 21. Fast forward to this year, and since January, there has been over 1,100 correction officers assaulted by violent inmates. Slashings and stabbings were also up 99% in fiscal year 22 over fiscal year 21, according to the most recent Mayor's Management Report. I have brought with me today victims and pictures of these brutal assaults. Not one of you has ever taken the time to speak to one of our officers who have been physically or sexually assaulted or slashed with a weapon. Not one of you has had to rush to the emergency room and witness the pain and anguish on a family member's face seeing what their relative went through. And yet, have the nerve to push through a bill that will only lead to more carnage in our jails, just so you can score political points with the progressive activists that continue to hold you and many of your fellow council members hostage. Despite your unwillingness to hear our pleas for help or to understand the catastrophe you are causing, you continue to justify your support of banning punitive segregation by falsely labeling it as solitary confinement and torture.
To wrap up, please.
For the record, we do not have a Hollywood depiction of solitary confinement in our jails, where inmates waste away in windowless cells, are fed a loaf of bread or a cup of water. Punitive segregation is simply a jail within a jail that exists solely for violent offenders who attack our officers and non-violent inmates. The cells in punitive segregation are the same cells that other inmates are in. Inmates in punitive segregation are given, please allow me more time.
I
other inmates that are still have family visits via video, please.
And
the fact is that non-violent inmates who never attack anyone else and simply serve their time never end up in punitive segregation, which is why of the approximately 6,000 in our custody, only approximately 160 currently belong in punitive segregation. That's roughly 2% of the total inmate population.
I can cut off the mic, but I'm giving you 30 seconds to wrap up so we can get to the other people. I've handled this hearing thus far.
When violent inmates rape, murder, stab, cut, and assault innocent people on the streets of New York, each of you supports having that perpetrator immediately arrested and removed from our neighborhoods. Yet when they commit the very same violent crimes in jail, you believe that they should get an 8-hour timeout and then return to the scene of their crimes? That's not just hypocrisy, that's plain reckless.
Wrap
I
up.
ask each and every one of you that are sponsors of this bill, what do we do with the individuals in our custody who continue to cut, stab, sexually assault, and brutally assault our officers and nonviolent inmates?